But why is travel insurance mandatory for a vacation in Dubai, Paridhi? If I don't need it, why should I have to buy it? Come on!
Tanmay, you think you don't need it. But if you were to forget or misplace your passport, travel insurance will be very helpful. Misplaced or lost baggage is still a thing and a huge problem.
Travel insurance takes care of that too?
It does, Tanmay. If you lose your baggage or if there's a delay on part of the airlines to provide it, you can buy emergency supplies meanwhile and get them to reimburse it later. What's with this traffic, man? Move it!
Wow, Paridhi, that does sound useful.
Trust me, Tanmay, I haven't even started yet. Travel insurance has many other benefits which should convince you that it should be made mandatory worldwide and not just in UAE. Coverage for legal proceeding expenses in case of personal liabilities, 24/7 travel assistance, concierge services, lounging in case of flight delays or reimbursement for trip cancellations. Travel insurance is your best bet against any risk related to travel.
I think you're right, Dee. I'm glad that it was mandatory. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had this conversation, and somewhere at the back of my mind, I'd have been stressed about the risks.
The only thing you should be stressed about is whether the mall will let you return this leather jacket that you purchased for your all boys trip before even checking the weather in Dubai.
Why do you think I'm taking you there, my smooth talking Paridhi?
You are listening to Policybazaar.ae's The Policy Project. We've got you covered.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Policybazaar.ae's The Policy Project. I'm Annie Arakel, the host of this podcast and your go-to person for all things insurance. I'm only hoping you're doing well. Tanmay, the person you just heard, does seem to be now after his sister kind of pointed out the essence of travel insurance. Imagine going shopping before a vacation with your friends. It's the best feeling ever, isn't it? And when you know that there is a guardian angel to look after you while on that trip, I think it's even better. It gives you a very, very nice protective feeling. Well, what else is travel insurance if not that it is a guardian angel? And to talk more in depth about it is our in-house insurance expert, Neeraj Gupta, the CEO of Policybazaar UAE. Neeraj envisions fostering a paradigm shift in the fintech ecosystem of UAE by changing the masses' perception of finance and social security by offering a robust alternative to traditional methodologies through Policybazaar.ae. He also intends on helping families secure their future, manage personal finance effectively, and live life without regrets. Welcome to the Policy Project. Neeraj, I'm sure your journey so far in this industry has been quite an exciting ride.
Thanks, Annie, for having me here. And it's always exciting to have a discussion on the insurance piece in general, right? The journey has been exciting, obviously. And with the post-COVID piece, I believe it has become a lot more relevant in people's lives.
Fair, absolutely fair. I've got a few queries now for you, which will help our listeners understand the nitty-gritties of travel insurance in the UAE, especially during a time when we know that travel is going to pick up because it's summers in most parts of the world, at least in the US and Europe. And so they're looking forward to travel and to come to a place like UAE. So the first question is literally like for last minute folks, and I think I can put myself in there. So is it possible to purchase travel insurance after booking a trip, or is it advisable to do so in advance? What do you suggest, Neeraj?
So essentially, let's understand why do you want to buy a travel insurance. Let's leave about the mandatory requirements of travel insurance that, okay, you need it for visa purpose. Let's leave that, right?
Okay.
Other than that, you're essentially buying a travel insurance to protect yourself from any eventualities that happen or trip cancellation happens or flight delays happen, right?
Correct.
So it is always advisable to buy the travel insurance as soon as you firm up your plan. So probably you book your travel tickets or you book your airline tickets. That is the time you buy on the same day. Because what happens is, for some reason, for a certain medical emergency, you're not able to travel. So which means you have to cancel.
Right.
Now, if you decide to cancel and you don't have a travel insurance because you thought the day of leaving I'll buy the travel insurance, then this will not be covered
Correct.
because you're buying then travel insurance post the event has happened, right? So it
Yeah.
is always advisable as a because you can't predict what's gonna happen, and that's the reason for insurance to exist, that you buy insurance for unplanned activities, right? So it is always advisable the moment you book anything, be it your hotel, be your travel tickets, be your flight tickets, anything, that is the time you book your travel insurance.
Wow. So time is not a constraint. So, for instance, if I booked my ticket, say 6 months before my departure to
Yes.
a particular country, the 6 months as well as the trip, all of it is covered, you say, Neeraj?
Yes, yes. See, it is also depending on the plan that you cover, but typically trip cancellations, trip delays are part of the travel insurance piece.
Correct.
So just to put it this way, you've booked the travel tickets, and unfortunately you meet with an accident, you have to be hospitalized,
Hmm.
or you could not travel.
Hmm.
Now, if you have all that doctor certificates and everything, travel insurance will pretty much cover the cancellation cost which the airlines refuses to refund.
Right, right. Oh my God, that is such good news because yes, when you have the fear of losing out all the money, especially when you come across a situation like this, which is totally out of your control, and if what is the percentage we're talking about here, then that the insurance company will reimburse.
See, it depends on the plan features. It might be able to cover about 80% or up to. So, what
Wow.
happens typically is you would have bought a tour package, travel tickets, or something of that sort, right? So, what you
Right,
essentially
right.
do is first reach out to the provider, initiate
Mm-hmm.
certain cancellation. They'll come back and tell you, ki, okay, these are the charges and this is the refund amount. So, whatever the refund
Correct.
amount you get, you might be able to get up to 100% on that. So, for example, you book a
Wow.
travel for 10,000 dirhams and your airline deducts 4,000 dirhams and only refunds you 6,000 dirhams. You might be able to claim up to 4,000 dirhams
Right. Okay.
through the travel insurance piece with certain deductibles. The deductibles could be okay, 250 dirhams, 500 dirhams, we not pay or we will not cover XYZ. But
Correct.
trust me on that, it should more than cover up the travel insurance cost.
Oh my God, I'm heaving a sigh of relief right now after learning about this. And that goes to show how important travel insurance is on any trip one takes. Okay, moving on to the next question. I'm also a health conscious person, so I have a health insurance policy, you know. But when it comes to traveling, there's also this medical emergency cover that is usually included in travel insurance policies. So, what is the difference, and is it important for us to have both or have the medical emergency coverage, especially when we're traveling in the travel insurance policy that we take?
See, typically what will happen is health insurance is a local subject, which means whichever is your home country, you bought the health insurance for that country, right?
Correct.
So typically in insurance, health insurance will cover you in that geography itself, but it will not cover you
Correct.
overseas. Although there are plans which exist which will cover you everywhere, anywhere.
Okay.
But having said that, health insurance typically is a very geographic specific.
Hmm.
Fair
Hmm.
enough. That is one piece. Then the other piece is travel insurance does not take care of your regular health ailments,
Correct.
regular health things that you go for a doctor
Sure.
to.
Sure.
Travel insurance will cover your medical emergencies, right? So, for example, if you're traveling and something happens, the idea with travel insurance would be to make you stabilized, make you safe, and then probably you reach back to the home country, and that is when your health insurance kicks in, right? So
Sure.
that's the difference. Other than that, travel insurance is typically very time bound. So if you're traveling for 10
Hmm.
days, it will cover you for those 10 days, whereas health insurance is
Hmm.
typically an annual policy which you renew year on year, right? And
Correct.
and the other part is health insurance will cover your normal day to day ailments and everything. Travel insurance will not cover that. So that should help.
So I think there shouldn't be any confusion between having a health insurance and so it is going to help us anywhere when it comes to travel. A medical emergency coverage is something that is very, very good and must be a part of your travel insurance policy.
Yes.
Okay, that's very good. We're going to move on to the next question. Since we're talking about health, there's also concerns about women who are pregnant, expecting moms who are, setting out on a vacation, especially this season. It happens actually every season. So are pregnancy charges also covered by travel insurance, Neeraj?
So this is a tricky one. So from a tricky one perspective is, uh, So you have to be mindful of couple of things, right? One,
Mm.
when you decided to travel, you did not know you were pregnant. It is treated as something
Ooh,
else. Fair enough. You might, as you mentioned, people plan 3, 4, 5 months in advance, right?
yes.
So at that time, you might not know you're pregnant, and you
Mm.
realize, and the doctor advises you not to travel. That
Mm.
could form part of travel insurance. It'll cover probably your cancellation charges, right?
Okay. Okay.
The other aspect is, as an advice, if you are an expecting mother and you want to travel, it is always advisable to get a medical certificate from a perspective that it's safe to travel. Fair enough.
Correct.
So that the doctor advises there is nothing. So what happens is travel insurance can help you if some complications happen. But travel
Mm.
insurance is not going to kick in when you have a normal delivery to happen. You were traveling, you knew, and everything. And typically, it is advisable also from a medical perspective. And in general, travel insurance will not cover if you're traveling post 24 weeks of pregnancy.
Ah, good point to be kept in mind.
So last trimester, typically, if you're traveling, so typically people would travel. I am a father myself, so I know a bit about that. So typically people are advised not to travel in the first trimester and the last. So second trimester you're
Correct.
allowed to travel. Uh,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
having said that, it is always advisable to take a note from your treating doctor that it is safe to travel, nothing is an issue, so that if something were to happen, that note can take.
Right. So then these notes will help, and there will be a certain percentage that I think the travel agent will make very clear in the beginning. So it's good to have that detailed conversation with the travel agent so you understand this, especially if you are in a situation like this where where you're pregnant or you're expecting or you're in the third or moving into the last trimester
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. But that's a good thing. That's a good thing, and I'm really happy that we women don't have to fret so much
Yeah.
anymore. There are always things that can be worked out in a good travel insurance policy, and you can travel. That's
Yes.
good. Moving on to the next question. After all this, expecting moms can be rest assured, that is for sure. But now coming to senior citizens and their families, what is the concept of repatriation of remains? And that kind of coverage in travel insurance, and why is it important for international travelers when it comes to the policy?
So repatriation of remains basically means, unfortunately, there's a demise of the person who was part of the insurance
Yeah,
policy, right? Now,
yeah,
typically,
yeah.
due to every reason, be it a cultural reason, religious reasons, or a family reason, at times it would happen that you want to perform the last rites, obviously, in the country or in the home country, right? And there's a
Correct,
significant cost of transporting the remains from the destination to the home country, right? So travel
correct.
insurance typically kicks in at that point of time, and up to a certain
Mm,
level they will cover those expenses. Now that depends on the plan that you've bought, right? The
mm,
expenses will depend on that. And because you're traveling, so you might not be aware of a lot of local rules or the procedures, right? So travel insurance company typically helps you with those processes in place, and they will
mm-hmm,
help
mm-hmm.
you with understanding all the aspects of that.
Correct, correct. So I think when senior citizens are traveling, this is a point that everybody needs to mention. But does it require a medical certificate of any kind if they have ailments, if they have something that they need to be, disclosing at the time of getting the policy, so their children know what they're getting into and things like that? Are there any such specific requirements?
See, what happens is, what needs to happen is we need to understand what a travel insurance is, or what an insurance is.
Mm,
Insurance is basically trying to cover you for any thing which you were not planned for, right?
sure. Yeah.
Now, at a
Yeah.
senior citizen, what tends to happen is you might have a pre-existing condition, which might be a heart ailment or diabetes, hypertension, or
Yeah.
XYZ reason,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it is very mandatory to disclose those pieces in the insurance while you're purchasing, right? And basis that, so that the insurance company can advise you, कि, okay, this is covered, this is not covered, or might load the premium also depending on what, because obviously your risk of getting something because you have a pre-existing is much higher than a person who does not have a pre-existing, right? So it is
Correct.
always advisable, and I believe it should be done by everyone, is be very truthful while buying an insurance, because you're buying an insurance. at the
Fair.
time of when something happens, when you're really in need of it, right? So there's no point. Like, it's almost like you never lie to your doctor, you never lie to
Yeah.
your insurer.
Yeah. I think one of the fears that most people have, especially when it comes to UAE, is how expensive it's going to get. And that's where I think the fear comes in. But we've already broken that down in previous sessions also. So let's make it very clear once again and reiterate the fact that insurance is something that's going to come in handy for you when you otherwise have to just shell it out of your pocket and have nothing to return or come back to you. So insurance is really a big boon for us today. So as far as senior citizens are concerned, I think we've clarified that. And now I'm coming to one of the most exciting parts of traveling to UAE from any other part of the world, and that is for the taste of adrenaline, adventure sports, extreme activities. Are there any specific insurance requirements then or recommendations for travelers engaging in such activities, Neeraj?
Yes. So, because obviously, if you are engaging in adventure sports, the risk or the chances of something happening obviously increase. So,
Yeah.
if you remember, if you do an adventure sport, typically the provider also will make you sign some document which you really get scared about. Okay, that we don't take any responsibility, right? If something were to happen to you. So, similarly, a lot of travel insurance typically adventure sports or certain thrill seeking activities are excluded,
Okay.
but there is obviously an optional cover available, or in
Uh huh.
different plans, when you declare that I want a specific cover or I want adventure sports to be also covered, then those are part of that insurance policy, but you have to explicitly tell that, or there needs to be a plan which covers that, and there are plans which exist like that. But having said that,
Right.
see, there are two sides of adventure sports. One, adventure sports is probably a common man or a typically a person would do, right? And
Yeah.
there are adventure sports where an expert would do, right?
Correct.
So probably an expert would dive to a much depth than a normal person would do, right? Or
Right.
if you're doing a
Right.
paragliding, a normal person would jump from a different with an assistance, an expert might be doing self, right?
Correct.
So that differentiates. So if you are an expert, then you specifically need to mention that to your insurance provider that I do this, probably not just to thrill seek, but I'm an expert at that. Because a travel insurance might have restrictions on the depth you can go to, or the type of
Oh, that's a nice point.
parasailing. Because obviously it determines if you're an expert, you do it as a thrill seeking on a regular basis, or you're doing this as a one off activity because you're traveling. So that
Correct.
becomes very
Wow. So again, it comes down to, I think, the point that we have to be very honest about whatever it is
exactly.
that we are going to do when it comes to these activities, because whether it's bungee jumping or whether it's, tandem jumping, skydiving, and those kind of things, activities that you have back in the UAE. Wow. That is amazing. Please be honest, very important, and please have a travel insurance because all of these can be covered with the required certificates that need to be submitted, like Neeraj has been telling us. Moving on to the next one. Now, the ever changing geopolitical conditions, Neeraj, and sudden shockers like what happened in Ukraine, for instance. One can't help but wonder if there are any limitations or exclusions in travel insurance policies regarding acts of terrorism or political unrest in the destination country. What do you have to say about that?
So there are a couple of points to that, right? Typically,
Uh-huh.
terrorism and act of political unrest are excluded part of the insurance policies. But what also
Okay.
needs to be understood is this is also based on government advisory. So typically,
Sure.
what might
Sure.
happen is if the government generates an advisory for its residents or for people that do not travel to this part of the world, then typically,
Mm.
if you're still traveling, insurance will not cover it because an advisory is in place,
Ah.
right?
Okay.
Having
Okay.
said that,
Fair.
any event might look like XYZ, but typically every event at a catastrophic level or at a big level is
Mm.
also declared by the government as certain event. So government might
Correct.
declare it, okay, it's a natural calamity, or might declare that it's a terrorism act. So that also determines would the insurance cover that or not, right? I know
Mm.
it might
Okay.
sound too many terms and conditions, but
Right.
having said that, that is how it is. So if the government declares that travel advisory exists or it declares it's a terrorism act, then basis that you should take your obviously plan ahead about that, and also go through the documentation of the travel insurance specifically, that what all is covered or not, right? Because see, as I
Sure.
mentioned,
Sure.
travel insurance from each provider varies,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
see, at the end, insurance can cover anything and everything which is unplanned at a premium.
Right.
So they
Right.
can underwrite it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess we've got to keep that in mind. It depends upon how much we want to stay protected and be kind of insured about this. That if an insurance policy is taken, then there are a lot of these aspects that will be covered because, like we already know, and like the pandemic has already hit us, was a complete surprise and a complete shock to all of us. We never ever dreamt, even in the worst of nightmares, but it happened. So I think that's also been a learning lesson, I believe, for the public in general. And I'm sure at Policybazaar.ae also there are many more coming with inquiries. Neeraj, am I correct?
Yes, true, very true. I believe one of the biggest queries today is if something like COVID or another phase of COVID were to happen, what happens? So at least now the travel insurance do cover that because they're aware of it. Now, if
Wow,
something like this can
wow.
happen.
Well, we are going to continue talking about so many different aspects of insurance policies. And today was travel insurance policy that we are talking about, various aspects. And they're not too many. They may sound a little more intensive, but when we sit down to do it, I think they're very simple. It's about a few extra minutes of your time that you give yourself, and of course, sit with the agent and clear all of this out. So that was very informative, Neeraj. Thank you so much for the in depth knowledge on this topic. And now, that brings me to our next segment. This is a very interesting segment. It's called Ask Away. Here, we take up FAQs, frequently asked questions by our customers, and respond to them with the help of course, you, our expert. Now, if you're too inquisitive and curious a learner like me and have got questions about insurance and personal finance, then don't hesitate. Just ask away. Slide into our DMs on Instagram, follow at Policy Bazaar UAE, or reach out to us via any other social channel, and we'll try our best to answer your questions in the next episode. Today, since we're taking up travel insurance questions that we have already received in our inbox, we're going to focus on that. Neeraj, are you ready to answer?
Yes, Andy, please go ahead.
The very first one. What is the maximum trip length covered in travel insurance?
It's 6 months, about 180 days to be precise.
Nice, nice. Am I covered for loss of cash in the case of theft or anything else?
In case of theft, yes, you're covered. Obviously, it depends on the policy.
Okay.
See, it's an added benefit. So if your add-on or your travel insurance covers loss of cash, then it is part of it.
Wow.
Obviously, you will have to submit those reports, theft report and everything, to
Oh,
claim
so
that.
it's only on the occasion or in a situation like theft, not if I've just lost money because I've left it somewhere. That
Yes,
doesn't help.
yes.
Okay. Moving on to the next one. Does it matter who I book my travel insurance through?
No, it does not.
Okay.
Ideally, it does not.
Okay. So I guess again, very clear conversation with the travel insurance agent is important to understand that nothing of this matters. It's really the policy that stands for you.
Yes.
Are pre-existing medical conditions covered under travel insurance?
So pre-existing conditions, if they are declared, they're covered in terms of emergencies.
Okay.
But pre-existing condition, if you have and your intention is to travel and get treatment. So, for example, you're traveling to US because you have an ailment you declare and you want to get treatment there. That's not going to be covered. But
Ah,
if you have a pre-existing and travel insurance accepts that, and you are traveling and you have a life-threatening condition, then so you might have a heart ailment, but you are
ooh,
fit to travel and everything, right? But something immediately was supposed to happen,
correct.
which
Correct.
causes a life threatening, then it is part of the insurance. Then it's covered.
Oh, that's very good news. That's absolutely good news. Well, with that, we've pretty much come to the end of our session. Any parting words that you'd like to tell our listeners about travel insurance, Neeraj?
So, Annie, as you mentioned throughout the session, please be very truthful to your insurance provider. Do have a travel insurance. To be honest, the cost of a travel insurance is going to be less than probably one meal as a family that you're planning ahead. So, just buy a
Right.
travel insurance. It doesn't cost much, it is insignificant, but it definitely helps you when you need it.
Right, with that, we have clearly come to the end of this segment. But don't go just yet. If you have any questions about insurance and personal finance, then simply ask away. DM us on Instagram, follow at Policybazaar UAE, or reach out to us via any other social channel, and we'll try our best to answer your queries in our next episode. For now, I hope we are well versed with travel insurance and ready to plan our vacation to UAE. We shall meet again in the next episode with more informative and insightful content along with our lovely experts. Till then, you better take care and stay tuned. Thank you so much for this session today, Neeraj. It was lovely.
Thank you, Annie. Thanks for having me. And for the listeners, please keep on tuning to the Policy Project.
Thanks again, and bye bye.
You were listening to Policybazaar.ae's The Policy Project. We've got you covered.